Hi, my dearest family. Today we are going to be looking at Saturn in the sign of Aries through the houses, basically for each rising sign. This is a promise that I made in my previous video where I give you a general forecast connected to Saturn in the sign of Aries. I highly recommend listening to that because in this video I'm not going to be explaining to you why I mentioned Mars in Leo, while I'm going to mention Vesta in Scorpio versus Vesta in, let's say, Aquarius and so forth, because it is all explained in the general video. So I'm just going to be focusing on the prediction part of things. However, before we dive into the forecast today, I want to take a moment to address the energy in the comment section. As many of you know, I'm a Pisces rising sign. Being a water rising makes me naturally sensitive to the energy I interact with. And lately, I have seen a rise in comments that go beyond feedback and move into bullying and entitlement. Let me give you a couple of examples. Bro, create a timestamp. I'm not your slave. We are not your slave. Or, oh, I cannot stand this guy's face. Oh, I cannot listen to this guy's. His voice is so annoying. Oh, look at how gay he is. I mean, excuse me. At the end of the day, my sexuality is none of your business. If you cannot listen to me, move on. You don't have to. If you cannot look at my face, just put the audio on. And I have never expected you to be my slave, but why are you expecting me to become your slave and do timestamps for you? If I do so, that's just out of my kind heart. And the reason why I'm not preparing that, anyway, I don't want to go into, a lengthy explanation, but preparing a video doesn't take 2 minutes. It has to be edited, it has to be posted, it has to be, well thought out, and so on. But I want to look at this through the lens of Saturn in Aries because what we are seeing is a perfect manifestation of those traits. Aries is the representation of self-entitlement. We see the me first shadow of Aries coming out of demands like, do timestamps, we aren't your slaves. It's the idea that the creator exists only to serve the viewer's immediate whim, ignoring the hours of work put in for free. Saturn in Aries, the burden on individuality. Saturn here can manifest as an attack on the physical self. So comments about my voice, my face, or what I wear are attempts to restrict or contract my right to be an individual. Because someone told me, oh, put t-shirt on. You don't look like Arnold Schwarzenegger. So why are you wearing a vest? It's my business. Now, Aries Antisha is in the sign of Virgo, and Virgo is about criticism and discrimination. So, because the Antisha of Aries is in Virgo, the shadow of this entitlement is hypercriticism. It's the need to find a flaw, whether it's my appearance or my sexuality, and use it to discriminate or put someone in a box. Listen, everyone is entitled to their opinion, and I appreciate that. But there is a difference between constructive criticism and projection. If the sight of my face or the sound of my voice is a burden to you, the most Aries thing you can do is to take independent action and move on to a different channel or create your own channel. And by the way, to the rest of you who bring supportive and curious energy to my channel, well, thank you for making this space what it is, because this channel has always been about education rather than just preparing a forecast and then break it down for the 12 signs and kind of like letting you know what's going to happen to you in the next 2.5 years or next week and so forth. This is one of the reasons why I usually don't prepare the timestamps. But thank you very much for those who are actually preparing them, because obviously you are making my life a lot easier. But anyway, I don't wish to vent about this in length because that wouldn't be my aim with this video. And I hope I don't hurt anyone's feelings by making this little announcement. But I felt like we had to talk about this because I want my channel to be a safe environment for everyone. Now, let's get going with Saturn through the sign of Aries. So I'm going to be switching off my ugly face so you don't have to be looking at it. And I'm going to be sharing the chart so that you can follow your own rising sign. And we are going to be starting this with Aries rising sign. And I'm just going to shift a day or two as well so that we are on the right day as well. Okay, so Aries rising sign. Well, this is going to be super personal for you because Saturn ingression is moving into your first house. And the first house is about the self. It's about rebuilding your identity. It's about being the unapologetic version of yourself. You don't have to apologize for how you look like. You don't have to apologize, how your sound is and so forth. I'm going to be brave enough to put myself out there. We have got this transitioning happening from the 12th house to the first house. So basically, from being invisible, I'm moving into that area which is requiring you to become fully visible. And I hope that you are going to be able to do that. Um, Now, with Saturn being in your first house, um, it's important to also mention a couple of negative traits. And this is how I'm going to be trying to put together. I'm going to give you three good scenarios and kind of like three negative ones so that you can kind of like work with it. But this, firstly, is going to be deeply personal. We have got the Mars Vesta Shiva powerhouse igniting your 11th house. This is about individuality and the tribe dynamic. So, one of the advice that I would like to give you is not to get lost among the crowd. How you are going to be able to stand out. The first house, Saturn, asks you to build a new identity. It wants you to figure out who you are. Sometimes it might be bringing some shock to others as well. Maybe you are going to be able to shock others, the physical changes that you are going to be experiencing. Now, last year, Mars was in your fifth house, which is about creative fire, romance, hobbies, the look at me type of energy. Vesta was in your eighth house in the sign of Scorpio, which is connection to hidden obsession, that psychological deep dives. And Chiron was in your first house, and it is still in the first house. So that's your personal want. It is asking you to be able to do a self-care. So how we can bring this together? It feels like that last year you felt a Leo spark in your fifth house. It was kind of like a solo mission. You were focused on your personal creative vision, maybe perhaps on your romantic entanglements that felt sacred in the dark, in a scorpionic way with Vesta in the eighth house. But now that this energy has been blown out into your 11th house, you are being forced to take that Saturnian first house discipline and apply it to your long-term goals. Last year, you might have been focused on short-term goals, such as, okay, how am I going to make money, for example, in the next 2 months? Now, we're going to have to plan out how this is going to be happening in the next, let's say, 2.5 years. It is telling you that you are not just a creator anymore. You are kind of like this strategic person towards a better future, towards the collective, towards your own dreams. Now, that Shiva Mars and Vesta conjunction in your 11th house can mean that your social circle or your big dreams, are being ruthlessly pruned. So, some of the scenarios that I can imagine is that, let's say, you are ready to launch a massive project, maybe a technical platform. And that's going to cement you as an authority figure, as a leader. Because Saturn in the first house wants you to be in the driving seat of your car. You should become that go-to type of expert. You should kind of choose a niche field and master it and then become the leader of that. Now, this could talk to you about you connecting with people who are kind of like having that same ideological flame that you have. And then together with that person, you can use this Shiva energy to dismantle something old, the corrupt system in your industry, in your community, and then to kind of create a new one. This is, for me, the archetype of a disciplined visionary. This is about bridging the gap between your physical health, for example, with Ceres and Saturn and Chiron in the first house, and your long-term goals. Maybe you have always wanted to lose weight, for example, and then now you are cracking the code. And you realize that group classes are actually motivating me because I'm in a competitive spirit with someone else. Or you might even be able to find a tribe that supports your new lifestyle. Now, let's have a look at some of the shadow side of things, which, Shiva and Mars conjunction in your 11th house can cause to burn the bridges with others as well. You can become so obsessed with your vision, your long-term goals, that you might start isolating yourself a little bit. And then you can feel with Saturn in the first lonely or kind of like unsupported by others. Or, Saturn in the first house wants you to take control, while the 11th house energy demands you to be being able to share the stage with others, demands group consensus. So this can create a slight war where you feel attacked by your peers or cancelled out by your community for being too rigid. This can also indicate that you are so focused on your long-term goals or a group mission that you might start ignoring your own wounds, your psychological improvement, your body routines, and so forth. So, if that is the case, I highly recommend that you need to understand that the body is our temple and we're going to have to be able to take care of it. So I think last year, Aries, you were about your own creative fire. And this year, it looks like that, kind of like the world wants a piece of it. We are moving from that fifth house of me to the 11th house of we type of energy. It is about going through your social circle, who is meant to be with me and who is not meant to be with me, who to leave behind and who to kind of drag along with me. The fifth house is short-term goals. It's the house of glory, while the 11th house is your long-term goals. It's about being able to share the stage with others. So when Mars was in your fifth house last year, it was about a quick win. There was an adrenaline of the chase and the spotlight of the moment. But now that Mars joins Vesta and Shiva in the 11th house. And this is about endurance. This is about legacy. And no matter what, I'm going to be able to reach my goals. This is about moving from personal validation towards more of a collective contribution type of energy. In the fifth house, we were looking for glory. We were trying to win a game. Maybe our motivation was to more to do with the win the game rather than actually going towards the long-term goals. So I would say that Saturn in the first house is demanding you to grow up, to take yourself seriously. I think last year you have already tried doing that, but maybe the motivation was glory and doing it in the short term validation, or kind of like proving the point that you are brilliant. This 2026 looks like that this is a developmental phase, and now I'm going to involve others as well because together we can achieve more. Imagine this as the energy of, I was a solo singer and then now I'm going to be singing in a choir, or we're going to be the next One Direction or something like that. It is still you being the pillar of that group because you are meant to be in a leadership position with Saturn in the sign of Aries. But I'm going to be able to help others to kind of like, get going. So I can really imagine you. It's like I'm not chasing the likes anymore on social media. I'm going to be building a movement by being the non-apologetic version of myself. you find that by sharing the stage with other experts, for example, you know, actually you are becoming a better authority figure as well. I can imagine that you will want to be launching a digital project, a social project, for example, and then you are going to be working extremely hard because you are working on your legacy right now. Um, I would also mention that Saturn is the ruler of your career department, as well as your 11th house, which is your long-term goals. So, from a career perspective, this could really talk to us about you uh, changing career. And let's say you want to become an entrepreneur, and this has been a dream of yours. And last year, you might have started working on that. Maybe it didn't necessarily work out in the best as possible way, but now I'm ready to roll up the sleeves and I am ready to actually make it happen. Okay, so that's Aries rising sign. Let's move on to Pisces rising sign. So Saturn is ingressing into your second house, while the Mars Vesta Shiva conjunction ignites your 12th house. This is a internal and karmic full moon moment. The 12th house is the unremembered memory and the womb. Themes that you might not have explored yet, or you are just kind of like explode on the surface level. So the very first ingression of Saturn in the second house, that could have been a financial burden, like figuring out what you are worth of, or trying to harden your resources a little bit. Now, the second ingression might be talking to you about the construction of a new value system, becoming more disciplined, for example, with your finances. I'm going to be watching out how much money I spend and so forth. Last year, Mars was in the sixth house. That's glory in the daily grind, drama at work, or being a little bit theatrical about our health. Now, the 12th house is a little bit more to do with strategic solitude, kind of like I'm gonna work on alone, or I'm gonna be working behind the scenes. Last year, Vesta was in the ninth house. So I was doing a lot, like I became obsessive, searching for the truth. I was doing a lot of research about occult and astrology. And now the 12th house is actually, you know what, how I can create an inner peace within myself. You had to be addressing last year some of your financial wounds, and it looks like that you had to be reinventing yourself. You had to be nurturing your self-worth a little bit more. Now, the focus is a little bit more about the security through owning your own pain. So Martin Leo in the sixth house was, you know, on one hand, "Ooh, let me just get the work done." You want it to be seen as the, you know, the king or the queen of the workplace, and you might have put a lot of effort into something. Vesta in Scorpio was really digging into, you know, the belief system and, in a way, looking at what to improve there. But now this energy is retreating into your 12th house, which is about, for example, let's say you were trying to lose weight by doing a lot of sport. Saturn in the second house would have liked you to kind of minimize your food intake a little bit, but no, we're gonna do more sport, then I can eat more. Now, that Mars is asking you to actually look at the emotional side of things as well, the mental side of things a little bit. You know, Mars Vesta Shiva is really focused on destroying this old kind of ghost that is haunting you. You can think of the sixth house as the short-term chores, and the 12th house is the long-term spiritual legacy. So this is about not just fixing the moment, like, okay, let me lose weight, for example, for, you know, 1 month, and then I'm gonna put that back on. So I'm gonna have to find a long-term solution to something. Last year was like, you know what, I'm gonna go to the office. Maybe I don't have much time to go to the gym. This year, this is about how to balance that out. I think you can use the Mars Shiva energy to finally destroy some of your self-sabotaging patterns. This clear space, this clear space allows you to build a second house financial structure, something that is going to be very aligned with your soul. Or you might be working on a project behind the scenes, and that could be eventually giving you a financial security. It's not going to be happening from one day to another. And Negatively speaking, I can imagine that you become so detached that you start ignoring your second house responsibilities a little bit. And you need to be careful because Shiva can destroy your bank account because you were too busy paying attention to something else. And then you might start seeing that there are some secret enemies, popping up in your life. Often this is your own mind anyway. You might feel like that you are under attack, for example, by, people and so forth, and then causing you to freeze. And then you don't feel secure in your own skin anymore. So it looks like there is a bit of a war going on within you, Pisces. It's kind of like the world fights over borders. It looks like that you are fighting for your soul, basically. It's about remembering the unremembered memories while you are waking up. And, you should be ready to destroy the ghosts of your past so that you can move towards a better future. I want to give you my personal example here for you because, last year, yeah, Saturn moved into my second house, and obviously Mars was in the sixth house. You know, um, Mars in the sixth house, sixth house is health, routine, and work. And I was pushing, the sport, and I wanted to focus more on weightlifting. Mars in Leo wants to look like a champion. It is very performative. But I felt a little bit of a lack of motivation as well because Mars in the sixth house can burn out really quickly, especially when there is no immediate result or we don't get the applause for it. And then Saturn in the second house starting to put squeeze on my finances, testing my self-worth. Now, this is a little bit, different because this Saturn moves into the second house, but now Mars is in the 12th. So this is about the internal power. This isn't about the hidden discipline. This is about strategies. This is about stepping back sometimes and then looking at the bigger picture as well. This is about taking care of the mental health as well as our private life. This is about building this new economy of your life. Last year it feels like that I was looking for this short-term glory in the fitness industry, for example. That was a little bit, yeah, like now I'm meant to be looking at the long-term legacy, you know. Last year I was so focused on writing up my books, for example. I wanted to get them done. I haven't managed to finish all of them, but they are going to be finished very soon, you know. So there is this, you know, um, reminder here that we need to stop caring about that like king or queen image. And we're just gonna have to commit to that private transformation that we want to do. Let's say the weight is gonna come off through the sixth house willpower, but also through the 12th house spiritual alignment as well. And then Saturn is no longer a disruption in the second house because you have built a system that works while you sleep. And you can use some of the technical skills of that Aquarius to automate or secure your resources as well. Now, negatively speaking, there is an invisible sinkhole here If you haven't done anything, if you didn't change much in your life, then Saturn can bring disruptions to your physical body as well as to your bills, or financial crisis. Because there might be an internal sabotage going on there, an internalized anger, for example. Instead of destroying bad habits, you might destroy your own confidence. And then the second house would represent the total crash of self-worth. Now, Saturn for you, Pisces, rules the 11th house and the 12th house. So this could talk to, the 12th house is solitude and unseen debts, while the 11th house is long-term goals, being able to share the stage, friends, and glory as well. So when Saturn moves through the second house, it is kind of like acting as an ambassador for your 11th and the 12th house, basically. So it looks like we have got a vision and we have to make it physical, a profitable structure. But the 12th house is requiring you to clear the ghosts of the past to stabilize your resources. I think last year many Pisces rising sign had certain type of financial disruptions, and it wasn't just a bad luck. It was demanding that your income has to be aligning with your soul's legacy. I want to give you another scenario here for you, if you don't mind. But last year, we were planning to launch my new membership, but I was super scared to do that. But then I decided to do it anyway. But it took me a kind of like a year to convince myself because, oh, who wants this Netflix version of membership and so forth? And it looks like that many of you enjoy it. So, the world is moving on basically. But last year it looks like that, the Saturn was telling you that you cannot have the crown if the foundation is built on, 12th house ghosts and 11th house illusions. So 2026 shift is, it's about clearing out the subconscious garbage so that Saturn can finally build that long-term goal, the long-term financial stability. So try to monetize your spiritual matters, for example, figure out your inner flame and then make it as a public asset, for example. Stop spending money on short-term glory and start investing into something instead. You need to realize that your self-worth is tied to the impact you have on people, on your friends, on the collective, and not just on your personal image. So, but there is you can get lost in the transformation as well that you forget that the 11th house need to share the stage with others. So therefore we've got long-term goals. You know, maybe you end up spiritual rich but physically broke. So there has to be a balance here. Okay. So we're gonna be moving on to Aquarius rising sign. So for you, Aquarius, the shift between 2025 and 26 is about the reorientation of your power. There is like you're moving from a focus on maybe hidden enemies or subconscious psychological debts, which is on one hand your 12th house. And you move into this um, raw physical confrontation of your personal strength, your physical presence. So for you, Saturn is the chart ruler, and its ingress into Aries marks a cycle where your very self becomes the project. So the very first ingression for you was maybe mental stress, tension with siblings or neighbors. Saturn was testing your voice there. Now, the Saturn second ingress, it's more about the infrastructure of your thoughts, building a permanent platform for who you are. Maybe you are ready to write a book, for example. With Mars last year, it was in the seventh house, and this is about glory through partnership. It's about having the power couple dynamics or having a rivalry with others as well. But now Mars is in the first house, so this is about radical self-definition. This is about I don't care, what type of drama, for example, I had last year about relationship. I know my own worth. I know my own truth. Last year, Vesta was in your 10th house, and there was a lot of focus on career, or maybe somehow your career was a bit dis destroyed. This year, that Vesta is in the first house, so that is really again focused on personal developments. So it really feels like that your drive was external. You wanted, let's say, to be in a relationship, or you wanted to be recognized by the partner or by the audience. Uh, you might have been the kingmaker, and then you made others feel really good about themselves. But now that fire is moving into your first house, which is, it's not about sharing the stage with others. This is actually burning that old stage down so that you can reveal who you are. It really kind of feels like that maybe last year you did this, like giving the power or giving the glory to others out of fear because in a way you wanted to be loved or you wanted to be accepted. But now this is not a short-term glory anymore. This is about you building up a new long-term identity. This is about focusing on your vitality as well. I think it's about you having to stop to become a people pleaser, and I'm gonna become a new version of myself. I'm gonna emerge as a singular, powerful authority figure who speaks with undeniable conviction. Vesta in your first house turns your health and sport, into kind of like a ritual. So this is a physical discipline as well. This is a technical mastery over your body, something that you have never tried before, potentially. But Saturn in the third house is all about, you have a message, and that has to be a stable message. Last year, some of the disruptions might have come from, for example, not being able to stand up for your own truth, or you went into argument that was kind of like unnecessary because you wanted to prove that, yeah, I'm worthy to someone else. Now it's time to prove to yourself that you are worthy. It can indicate, though, that it can make, like, especially Mars and Shiva, uh, in the first house can make you a little bit more aggressive, and you can accidentally destroy some of your connections with others. Or this can indicate an intellectual rigidity with Saturn in the third house, where you are in your own mental prison. You are so caught up communicating in the right way that you lose that Aquarian, uniqueness. And the first house can get frustrated then. And then you can experience, for example, headaches. Um, so it really feels like that you are building a road to a to your home in a way. This is a literal construction of your intellectual foundation, basically. I think this is about knowing your raw power. Um, that Saturn is telling you that you are meant to be building something kind of like word by word. Now, because Saturn is the ruler of your 12th house and the first house, it's an interesting combination because one is very much invisible, the other one is super visible. So it's bringing the visible world and the invisible world together. The first house is your body, your identity, and the 12th house is your unconscious mind. So when Saturn is in the third house, it's kind of like acting like a translator between your subconscious and the physical body, basically. So it really feels like that you have to be learning more about fears, about your past, about your brand as well, about the unremembered part of your ancestry line. This could talk to us about that you have to be able to become the voice of a local community. Or you have to be naming some of your hidden fears, and maybe you have to be approaching it a little bit more in a logical way. I think last year some of you had some drama happening in relationships, maybe arguments with the boyfriend, breakup with the boyfriend, and so forth. And then you might have started disconnecting yourself a little bit with the 12th house. And yeah, I'm not going to speak as much, I'm not going to socialize as much, and so forth. But now, this 2026, we have got the first house activation. So this is about destroying and rebuilding your own physical and social identity as well. Um, and that's where it becomes so important that the stage is mine, basically. And that 12th house version of myself who was scared, who had these self-sabotaging behaviors, or I just stayed in the background because I was afraid of being in the spotlight. Now I'm going to take full ownership of that and I'm going to step into the spotlight, but on my own. Maybe you are ready to finally write a book or launch a course, something that perfectly expresses your first house identity and your 12th house depth as well, you know. Or maybe you use that Mars and Shiva energy to kind of clear out this karmic junk in your life, something that might have been making you sick or tired. So this Saturn in the third house will talk to you about mental clarity, a lot more focus. You can become a leader somehow in your local community, and you might start teaching, putting together courses, um, and you can find yourself being more authentic, a little bit more on the weird side, but people can start appreciating that. However, with that Mars and Shiva in your first house, you can become this anti-everything, as well. So, no, I'm not up for that. You keep saying no to things, you know, um, and then you can become known for something that you have destroyed rather not what you are meant to be building. Or there could be a lot of, the 12th house, it's a fear and it leaks now into your third house. So you can get caught up in conspiracy theories and hidden enemies that first house becomes rigid, kind of like detached, emotionally unavailable. So it's an intellectual isolation as well as the communication can become dense. Excuse me. No one really understands you. So you are standing on the stage, but if you are speaking the 12th house language, which is the fear, the isolation, it's kind of like the audience is going to leave and then they are not listening to you anymore. So this is how I feel about your energy pattern. Um, I think the key takeaway for you is that you're going to have to be able to find your voice. You're going to have to become a little bit louder. You're going to have to be able to initiate those conversations. But it does say that every word you speak or write, carries a weight with that. It's a heavy responsibility. This is about taking your ideas more seriously as well. This is about not being interested in small talks and, gossips and stuff like that. This is let's have a meaningful conversation, basically. Because Saturn is in fall in Aries, there could be a tension between wanting to say it now and wanting to say it perfectly. Aries is the now, and Saturn is connected to the perfection element. So it's kind of like a mental constipation type of energy, a sudden fear that your ideas are not well thought out or not heavy enough somehow. Or it could indicate some fights with your siblings, your neighbors, your close colleagues as well. But do we have to go into that? Because Aries is often a little bit on the childlike energy. And maybe your sister or your brother or that neighbor is acting out on anger or frustration, and then they are projecting that onto you. Why? Because Mars last year was in the seventh house. So they were projecting that onto the partnerships that you had, but now they might be projecting that onto you. So you might want to focus on finishing a major intellectual project, for example. The third house is a little bit like the craftsman, and Saturn can give you a lot of stamina, to kind of create this polished masterpiece, basically. It's about you moving away from being a student to become this teacher archetype as well. It's about mental resilience. Yes, sometimes we have to create these mental armors, right? And then therefore we can become very defensive as well if we feel attacked with Mars and Shiva and Vesta in the first house. But just remember that you are also projecting your own fears onto others as well. Make sure that you keep listening to others. You don't necessarily use the word as weapons. And don't put yourself in a box that you are an eternal student. Okay, so let's move on to Capricorn rising sign. So, Capricorn rising sign, this transit of Saturn in the sign of Aries is the ultimate reality check for your home and your career. Since Saturn is your chart ruler, you will feel these changes in your bones, I would say. I think last year might have been a preview of chaos in your house. Now it's actually time to fix the roof or to change the foundation. Last year, you had Saturn in the fourth house for a little while. Maybe there was a sudden problem with family, or the home actually you live in, or you kind of felt like you don't belong here. This year, this might lead to or the next couple of years to be precise, might be leading to a real estate deals. You might be going for a renovation, or you have to be taking care of a elderly parent. Last year, Mars was in your eighth house. And there could have been a bit of a drama around mortgage, debts, or even with the job of your partner. But now this year, Mars is in the second house, which is let's make money through something specific, high focused side hustles. Last year, we had Vesta in your 11th house, and we might have obsessed over a specific uh, group or even a long-term goal. But this year, Vesta is in the second house as well. So this might be talking to us about having to cut off bad spending habits and focusing on assets, what we have got, what our talents are. So it's kind of like, the spotlight is on your living room. Imagine that you had a leak last year, a bad landlord, a fight with a family member, uh, and then now this is the year you actually, let's say you are ready to sign the papers. You are, whether it's buying a house, moving, or, gutting the kitchen, basically. Saturn in the fourth house means physical labor and long-term commitment to that base. It's about building a fortress where you actually feel safe. And then if I don't feel safe, then this is asking us to relocate. Now, of course, we've got the Vesta, Mars, and Shiva conjunction in your second house. So it's kind of like deleting a source of income that no longer works. Or it's kind of like killing your spending habit. And there is a focus on more of a tunnel vision towards that bank account right now. You aren't interested in kind of, maybe money. You want something hard cash that you can control. So some of the scenarios that I can imagine that you renovate your home or buy a property, and obviously that will be increasing your safety net, your net worth as well. Or you can use your personal discipline, because Saturn is the ruler of your chart, to manage the logistics of that fourth house move, for example. Or maybe you are ready to pay off a major debt or you are ready to end a financial contract. And of course, that would be leaving you with more liquid cash as well as less stress. Or maybe you have to be stepping up as the head of the family and you have to organize the household, set the rules. And then finally, maybe everyone is going to start listening to you. This could, of course, some of the negative scenarios is that you might spend more money on the house renovation, for example, that you planned. And we can get very stressed about second house matters, of course. It's kind of like when you destroy your savings, Shiva and Mars, because you didn't budget for the Saturnian delays. You didn't kind of think of that it's going to take as long as you have anticipated. Or there could be some clashes within the family as well, like a massive fallout with family members over money. Who owns what? And that could be leading to this kind of cold atmosphere at home. Last year Mars was here, which is other people's money. Now Mars is here, this is my money. So there could be a clash over being dependent or on someone else's finances, and now I want to be independent. You can do a lot of physical labor work as well with this, just to save money. For example, you wanna, I don't know, fix up the roof, for example, yourself because you wanna be fixing or saving up some money. But you can end up with such things as back injury or exhaustion, and that could stop you from working. So just think smartly. I think there was a bit of a stress last year with the first ingress of Saturn into Aries in your domestic life. And this is now balancing out the work and your home life. If you are planning to move or renovate, I would say maybe you want to be doing it now. That Mars, Vesta, Shiva definitely wants you to kind of have that surgical precision, how you handle the budget. But Saturn might indicate that it's going to take twice as long as you think. So just be mindful about that. Um, the reason why we're looking at Mars, because, last year the ingress Saturn was ruled by Mars in Leo. Now this year it's ruled by Mars, of course, but it is in Aquarius. So it's kind of like the two Mars are in opposition. And this is about my effort versus other people's effort. So maybe you're trying to put a lot of energy into, let's say, to relocate, to fix up connections with others. And you might feel like that others are not putting as much in it as you would like to. So that could lead to kind of like a little bit of a family feud, you know. Somehow Mars, our energy level was stuck in other people's stuff. Maybe I had to be dealing with banks or the partner was struggling to make ends meet. And it might have felt like that you didn't have the total control. And you had to negotiate, you had to wait for approvals, you had to potentially stop something that had already been in the process. But maybe at the same time, you were trying to look like a power player. You try to make ends meet as much as possible, but maybe it has become exhausting. So this Saturn could also ask us to share the responsibilities here. This is the development of last year's impact, and the development here is that It's about not just the direct paycheck, but your physical stuff as well. You know, okay, I'm not interested anymore in what you say, how much money you're gonna make. I'm interested in what actually you give me. So, because you want to see that your bank account is getting balanced out. So, this could also indicate killing off certain type of financial dependencies on others. And I'm going to be focused on how much money I make. This might be talking to us about that last year you might have been at the mercy of others. Now I have got the remote control basically. So I'm dictating, I'm deciding the budget. Last year there could have been an internal drive to work harder. But maybe due to family issues, you didn't have the chance. Now the question is who owns what? This is about you becoming the CEO of your own money rather than allowing others to be, the CEO of your money. Maybe you decide that certain client or partnership is too much of a drama. And then with Shiva, Mars, Vesta, we might be pulling out of a contract as well. Or maybe last year you might have tried to take a loan, or you have even taken it. And then this year you might be very focused that I need to be able to pay this back. So this is about self-funding in a way. And we can become a bit cheap as well, because we have got strategic goals here. So that might be also important. Also, this could talk to us about certain type of investments because you need better tools in a way to, fix the home and stuff like that. So that's even a possibility with that. Like being able to work from home, but in order for me to do that, I need certain type of tools. Okay, so that's Capricorn rising sign. Um, let's move on to Sagittarius rising sign. So, of course, Sagittarius, this transition is happening in your fifth house. It's kind of loud transit, I must say, because, the fifth house is kind of raw. And it's the house of joy, creativity, children. And then we've got the third house getting switched on here as well, which is your neighborhood, your commute, your daily communications. Last year might have been fun, but slightly bit chaotic. There might have been a lot of fun ideas, a lot of spark, but they might have been a bit more chaotic. This is about turning your hobbies and your ideas into a literal business, a craft. Last year, you might have had a bit of a creative block or heavy responsibilities involving your children and your hobbies. But this year it feels like that you are getting committed to more of a long-term creative project. Something that might have been fun last year, it becomes more of a serious work. Last year, Mars was in the ninth house. You might have had huge travel plans. You might have had the ideas of teaching or winning a legal case to expand your horizon. You might have felt very motivated to see the bigger picture, to study, for example. But maybe you had some wars with international people, or people who might be disregarding your viewpoints on social media. Now, this could indicate with the third house, Mars, that we are dealing with the local people, dealing with siblings, dealing with neighbors. Um, and last year, Vesta was in the 12th house. So there were certain type of secret fears there connected to your sibling, for example, or connected to a certain type of a truth. So this year you seem to be focusing more of cleaning of your mental space and the local network and kind of blocking people on your Facebook and so forth. The fifth house is where we play, but Saturn here makes fun a little bit more like a chore. So I can imagine you last year starting a creative hobby or even a new romance and something that we were really excited about, but maybe it hit the wall of reality. Now I'm gonna be approaching my creative ideas more in a disciplined way. I mean, imagine that you are a writer, for example. Maybe last year you were struggling to kind of find your muses, and maybe you were sitting at the desk 4 hours a day trying to write, but you might not have managed to get, ahead much. Let's say if you have got kids, they might have required more structured time, schooling boundaries, and so forth. But this year we seem to be getting a little bit more committed, organizing the lives of our kids and so forth, to be able to have that fun as well. With Mars and Shiva Vesta, it really feels like that you are burning down your old social circle, deleting people from your phone, especially when you feel like that they are draining your energy. Maybe you have got this tunnel vision towards a specific skill or a piece of technology. You might be upgrading your car, your phone, your website as well. Something that actually works or, according to the trends of 2026 and 27. I can imagine that you are about to take on a side project. Maybe separate from your family or separate from your siblings, something that you do and it's purely me. This is not about sharing the stage anymore. This is about owning the stage. And with Mars in the third house, this could indicate that I'm not going to share the stage anymore with my sibling. Or maybe that Mars, Vesta Shiva is going to kind of clean up how we speak and write. I'm going to stop over explaining myself, and which is a classic Sagittarius trait anyway. And we start focusing a little bit more on, the technical side of the voice. Okay, people pay for it. Okay, I'm ready. Um, you can feel so much pressure as well to be great that you stop having fun though. Your hobbies can feel like work, and you might even end up destroying your social life because you are too serious to be busy. You can have arguments with your siblings and as well as with your neighbors. Maybe the neighborhood that where you live, it feels like that it's getting worse and worse. So you might even end up thinking about selling a property or moving and so forth. You might end up doing a lot of short trips as well. So that's even possible. But you can have that kind of technological fatigue as well, or gadgets can break down because we might be pushing them way too hard. So that's your. Oh, Saturn is the ruler of second house as well. So, of course, for you, Sagittarius, Saturn is your financial planet. So last year, you might have been relying on the ideas of others or relying on, like, oh, I need money, so let me give discount to other people because I need other people's money. This year, you might be kind of like growing up, maturing, and then you start looking at your own self-worth as well. But this is a combination where I want to be able to make money out of something that is fun for me. It's kind of like your hobbies become your personal brand, not just for the sake of fun, but they might start paying the bills as well. Last year, we might have started working on our financial stability. But this year, we can start improving that especially if we start focusing on one single idea, kind of like the bestest one in a way. Last year, you might have been kind of looking for the glory, from your audience and then trying to make, let's say, something appealing to the public in a way, because you were looking at the bigger picture. But now, you might feel like that, yeah, but being kind of like that nice doesn't always bring me money. And maybe I'm going to have to kind of start thinking about a different sales pitch. Having big ideas don't put food on the table. So I'm going to have to have a great idea that is going to put money on the table. So this is a year or a couple of years when you have to turn your talent into a product. Let's say you are a photographer. Stop taking photos for free and start charging a professional rate. Or if you're into sport, you move from playing, um, to kind of become the professional footballer. So you can really create or launch a creative project, and that could become the steady source of income in the next couple of years. You can spend a lot of money on creative project as well, or even on your romantic interest. But what do I get in return? So you might want to be thinking of that too. Okay, so that's your energy pattern, Scorpio rising sign, and I hope it helps. So let's move, no, Scorpio, Sagittarius rising sign, sorry. So now let's move on to Scorpio rising sign. So Saturn will be moving into your sixth house. This Saturn ingress is forcing you to balance your health and routine against your deepest fears and shared assets. Mars is the traditional ruler of your chart, so the fact that it's in a triple conjunction with Vesta and Shiva in your fourth house, which is your homes and roots, it's kind of like an indication there is a bit of a war where we sleep. So Saturn went into the sign of Aries last year, and maybe there was a sudden health scenario, or work has become way too heavy, or work has become super boring. So now as this Saturn is asking us to master certain type of routines, kind of let's sober up a little bit. Let's master a craft. Let's fix something up here. Last year Mars was in the 10th house, so I wanted to be recognized. I wanted to be seen by work, but also this might be certain type of public battles. It's kind of like I'm the boss. This year that Mars is in the 4th house. So this is about the entire focus goes on where I live, who I live together with. Potentially family debates. So, I'm kind of seeing a workhorse here. You know, Imagine the sixth house as the engine room. Saturn here makes the daily grind feel heavier, but it also makes you as the master of details, though. So I can imagine last year you having a lack of motivation or disruption to your daily habits. It felt like you were working hard but getting no glory, basically. And the Mars wanted to get the glory in Leo. It wanted to get promoted. But now you might start focusing a little bit more systematically on your health. Let's say you aren't trying to lose weight, you are following, a certain type of a protocol, a regime. You aren't just working, you are trying to potentially build a professional system that is foolproof, fail-proof. Saturn teaches consistency in the sixth house. And it is also telling you that you have got certain type of superpower, but it has to be kind of like revised a little bit. It might feel like that you are burning down old family dynamics or literally gutting your house as well. This is kind of like scorched earth, basically, regarding to your private life, stripping something back. There is a psychological awakening here. There's a focus on security as well. So you might be cutting off toxic relatives, clearing out decades of, psychological junk from your living space, something that you hoarded. This could indicate a home, a renovation as well. Building an office, for example, into your house, kind of like creating a work corner. Or maybe this is a long-standing health issue of a parent. Or maybe you become more disciplined towards your body and you start doing functional training, for example, buying a high performance machine, maybe a running machine to your home environment, and so forth. Maybe last year you had to be handling a lot of hard work at work, or maybe just all the Saturnian tasks kind of like fell on you. And maybe it hurt your ego that they were not kind of recognizing you for that. But it's kind of like I don't want to be this indispensable foundation of the company anymore. Maybe I'm going to become my own boss. I can imagine last year, there might have been a split in the family. Maybe the truth came out and maybe you felt like that your own family is not supporting you. So there might have been domestic stress and a lot of work. So obviously that machine can break. You can break. Because we might not have been aware of our own limits. So this year, this is about working hard, but working smart as well. You can get so caught up in the details of your work that you don't see the bigger picture anymore. You become the master of details, but you might be missing major opportunities. So that's why we don't need to work 24/7. I think last year you were focused on maintaining your public image, but maybe the private stability, has been somehow ignored. Now, Saturn is the ruler of third house and fourth house. So, Saturn is the ruler of the fourth house, and that's where Mars and Vesta is. This could talk to us about certain type of health struggles within the family. So maybe it's about responsibilities regarding a parent of yours who has to be taken to hospitals and appointments and so forth. But also, this is inviting you to have a closer look at your mental health as well, your domestic stability. Basically, it says that your domestic stability is very dependent on the routines that you carry out. It rules your third house as well. So this is, the third house is how you think and talk. Um, and like, how do I talk and like think, and what do they think of me? You can have an idea, but that might need to be turned into a craft. I think last year you were after a bit of a recognition in the outside world. But now it's more to do with your engine being broken and it has to be fixed up. And meaning that I have to be actually giving myself the validation rather than expecting it from the boss. Um, so this might be about working from home. You are trying to organize your daily schedule a little bit more so that you can find time for your mental health. I'm gonna try to make my home environment more of a place of like power rather than chaos. Maybe you're gonna be on a very specific diet or exercise ritual. You wanna break kind of like the family curse in a way, kind of like facing the genetic health issues. Maybe you realize that work is actually medicine because I have been, I don't know, at home with the kids for many years. You might take, let's say, an idea of yours, like a booklet, and then you want to turn it into a practical manual. So that's your energy pattern. Let's move on to Libra rising sign. So let's move on to Libra rising sign. So Libra Saturn is moving into your seventh house, the house of relationship, partnerships, and contracts. You've got a fifth house activation by Mars and Vesta conjunction, which is creativity, children, and the risk that you take. You, as Libra rising sign, your chart rule is Venus. And most likely last year, with Mars being in your 11th house, you were very much focused on your social circle, on your goals and dreams. But now this energy is somehow shifting towards your one-to-one relationships and how you express your creative flame. So last year, Saturn has already given you a preview. It really feels like that preview was kind of like connected to legal realizations, partnerships, for example, as in that being in a partnership sometimes has got its ups and downs, maybe challenges. Maybe the relationship has become kind of like a burden. This Saturn ingress is more to do with signing long-term contracts, becoming committed to a partnership, for example, getting married, or the realization that this relationship cannot go any further, so I'm going to walk out of it. This could also indicate that you are trying to upgrade ways of finding your own clients, for example. Because Mars in the 11th house might indicate that, let's say, last year you were very focused on creating a social media channel and then to kind of get admired, to kind of like get the followers, basically. It's trying to be the king or the queen of the group that we are part of. But now this Mars is going to be more focused on the technical creativity and it's going to be taking very huge risks as well. Now, last year, Vesta was in the second house, so we could have obsessed over on our money and self-worth, but this time around, that Vesta is also in the fifth house as well, which is about enjoying life to the fullest. This is about going after your creative vision. So it really feels like there's a relationship audit happening here. The seventh house is the mirror. Saturn here makes your relationship feel like it's too much of a work. And last year you might have had a warning shot, kind of like a bit of a distance that you made within the partnership, or you realized that the partnership wasn't as stable as you thought. Now, this is more of a contractual agreement period here, either getting married, signing a serious business partnership, or you're finalizing a divorce. It can be, of course, personal and professional as well at the same time. This is a question whether this person you are around is a pillar in your life or are they a burden somehow? You might be looking at whether we are sharing the same vision, the same goals, the same stage, and do they have a solid floor? I think that Mars Vesta Shiva conjunction in your fifth house, this is uh, this is kind of like killing off certain type of project that was just for fun, so that you can focus on something that is actually super sacred to you. Now imagine that if you've got children, you might become very protective, or you are focused on their independence as well as on your independence as well. Or if you're an artist, then you can have this. kind of like tunnel vision towards a creative project. So I can imagine that you might be signing a contract during the next couple of years. And maybe together with that person, you are going to be launching a certain type of a creative business, something new, something revolutionary. Or you stop people pleasing. That's a very classical Libra trait anyway. And you start committing to self-expression, something that makes you feel unique. You might even figure out or find that the more you focus on your own fire, the better actually your partnership becomes, the better respect you get from other people as well. And you can be attracting someone as well into your life, especially if you are single, who might be older or more established, somehow carrying those Saturnian traits. And that could bring more of a sense of security, a second house security to your life that might have been missing actually last year. Some of the negative scenarios that I can imagine here is that, uh, you know, um, it's like Saturn in the seventh house is like making your relationship a bit of a boardroom. um, the partners can become way too focused on being right or independent, and there might be more of an emotional detachment happening. Or maybe you take that Mars impulsive risk-taking abilities and you're taking a chance on someone, or you're taking a chance on a contractual agreement, but you need to be careful because it can hit a wall as well. And you can destroy a partnership, for example, over a creative disagreement. Or you can get so obsessed with your specific way of doing things that you can be pushing allies away as well. And then you kind of like standing on the stage alone. There is no one to share the glory with. I think last year might have been about who you knew. And this year is more to do with who you are committed to, what you are willing to burn for. I think don't be afraid to give no's in relationships, not just romantic. Remember that. Saturn in the seventh house is kind of like a filter. If the partnership cannot handle a certain type of a pressure, because it's a developmental phase, then it might indicate that it's not meant to be part of your long-term foundation. Now, also remember that Saturn is the ruler of your fourth and fifth house. So, having the ruler of the fourth house being in the seventh is actually four sign away. So, this could even indicate a second home, certain type of relocation topics as well for you. I can imagine because the fourth house is something to do with your private sanctuary and heritage. So, this could really talk to you about, for example, that you were dreaming big and you were, seeking kind of glory among your social circles. But now I want to be spending more quality time together with my partner, for example. Maybe you felt like that your personal life was being a little bit squeezed by other people's expectations. Do not want to kind of allow that anymore. And that's why you might start paying attention to your creative self-expression a little bit more. But this is also about sharing the stage, like moving from sharing the stage with friends to building a stage with one potential business partner. So there's this creative power couple type of dynamics that could be going on here as well. And maybe you and your partner try to turn your home into a creative studio, a certain type of a business, for example. Or you can make a major decision about children as well, or real estate that might be involving certain type of legal agreements as well. So, for example, we decide to have a child, we decide to sell a home, buy a home, to relocate, and so forth. But this is kind of like, negatively speaking, a home wrecker type of scenario as well, because imagine that you sign a business deal that puts immense pressure on your family. The rules of the partnership kind of start suffocating the joy in your life. There could be a dispute over who owns this creative stuff, whose child is this, and so forth. So, Libra, that's your Saturn in the sign of Aries in the seventh house. Remember, I made a separate video about Neptune as well, so you might want to revisit that. Let's move on to Virgo rising sign. So, Virgo, this conjunction is going to be taking place in your eighth house, the house of shared resources, debt, and transformation. There is quite a trigger happening in your sixth house as well with Mars and Vesta conjunction, which is the representation of health and daily routines. So it really feels like last year, the very first ingression of Saturn into the sign of Aries. Imagine that you got a no, for example, from a bank, or you kind of started being worried about your debts. This year is a little bit more about radical financial restructuring. It's about sobering up psychologically. Now, last year, Mars was in the 12th house, so there were certain type of secret battles going on or some drama behind the scenes. But this time around, Mars is in the 6th house, which is a little bit more of a radical technical change the way I work, connected to our routines. It's kind of like a surgical work habit, becoming a little bit slightly more precise, or kind of like walking away from a work scenario as well. Last year, Vesta was in the third house, which was very obsessed over communication or doing research on a specific topic. This year, Vesta is in the sixth house as well. So this is very focused on the physical health. So what it feels like is that, there is a deep audit going on with Saturn in the eighth house. The eighth house is other people's money. It's kind of like your psychological basement. It feels like that last year you got this warning shot regarding your account, tax issues, the partner's income. And it might have felt like somehow this is actually limiting your freedom. Now, this year is more to do with settlement. Now, it's about clearing the debt, dealing with inheritances, finalizing insurance claims, for example. Saturn really demands you to have a sober look at what I have, what is owed to you, so that you can build a new financial structure that won't collapse. Now, that Mars Vesta Shiva combination, it's about killing of bad habits, smoking, sugar, late nights out, and so forth. Um, and you do that with kind of like more of a cold Aquarian detachment. Maybe this year you are more focused on productivity, trying to use some technology or new systems to make your work life easier or kind of like fail-proof as well. There could be a massive focus, for example, on your physical body as well. Of course, the sixth house is health, the eighth house is surgical. So potentially you might decide that I want to lose weight. I want to get back to the gym. I want to do certain type of plastic surgeries and so forth. The sixth house is about discipline. So I'm ready to work extra hard or extra hours in a way to be able to pay off the debt. It could talk to you about that you treat your body like a bit of a machine. You try to cut out everything that doesn't serve that body anymore. And then with Saturn in the eighth house, we can realize that health is wealth. basically. And then when I'm healthier, then actually it might be matching my bank account as well. Or maybe, it can feel like that at work, you are the one who has to do the heavy lifting, basically. And therefore, you can increase your own value. It's about power gain, for example, at work. But there could be a lot of fear of death, lot of fear of aging as well coming up. That might be freezing you a little bit, or Saturn sometimes makes the numbers look scarier than they are. And that could be leading to some type of worries, like being worried about financial scenarios, being worried about alimony, settlements, and so forth. Mars Shiva surely becomes slightly bit obsessed with efficiency, and maybe might start burning bridges with colleagues, for example, or maybe the work place atmosphere kind of becomes a bit too rigid or even unbearable, and then we can leave the job behind as well. But you might be pushing your body way too much. That could lead to a bit of a crisis. You ignore the Saturnian warnings of fatigue, and we can end up with a physical breakdown as well, and that could be stopping your income flow. With Mars last year in the 12th house, it's about what was hidden. This year is more to do with what's practical. So this is telling you to check the small print. Saturn in the eighth house punishes laziness, for example, in contracts, but it really rewards the deep research. This is asking you to fix your leaks in your budget and even in your body as well. Kind of like if you experience this mental leak or energy leak, within your body, then that Saturn wants you to become more serious about it. Now, Saturn rules two houses in your chart. One is number five and one is number fifth. So, the fifth house is about what you do for fun. And the sixth house is how you handle your to-do lists. So this could talk to us about, trying to monetize, for example, a hobby of yours, uh, with Saturn in the eighth house. And with the sixth house, this could be talking to us about dealing with workplace issues, toxic systems, even certain type of legal matters as well. I think last year you might have been doing a lot of invisible work, or you might have dreamt about, a creative project, but maybe that got stuck in your head. And now this would talk to you about you might even have felt a little bit like disconnected between effort and reward as well. Like things are not rewarded in my life. But now this is about, yeah, let's roll up the sleeves. Let's make it happen. Let's clear our psychological fears. Let's move away from these secret dreams to kind of like this surgical implementation. So you can really start working on a creative project or even specializing your skills or to find an investor or a partner to back your creative vision. And maybe you go to the bank and ask them to give you a loan because you have got this brilliant idea. Shiva Mars is surely trying to burn away the parts of your routines that is waste of time. So it's going to ask you to make sacrifices in a way. Or, maybe you spend money on high-tech health routines, for example, that completely changes your life. And if you are disciplined to it, this is basically leading to a massive success. However, you can have this. Imagine yourself being in a golden handcuff as well, especially if you're in a relationship. And for example, there are certain type of financial rewards within that partnership, but somehow my freedom is limited. Then Saturn might be bringing you further kind of like restrictions. It can make you feel like that you have sold your soul to a contract that is too rigid, too demanding, and then maybe we want to somehow get out of it. If you ignore the sixth house Saturnian warnings about your health, then it could really lead to a eighth house huge medical bill as well. So please take care of yourself. Let's move on to Leo rising sign, but let me have a sip of water. So Leo, you've got a ninth and seventh house activation happening this year. And last year, this was a nine and first house activation, especially. So, Leo, you are the stage. And last year, Mars was kind of like in your first house. So that was kind of like a coronation moment. I wanted to feel good about myself. I wanted to be seen. I wanted to be praised. Maybe I wanted to be making changes within my physical body. This was about a look at me energy. But this time around, this year, this is about look at what I've built. Look at what we have built together. So Saturn moves into your ninth house, which is the house of beliefs and teaching and publishing. And Mars, Vesta Shiva conjunction is in your seventh house, which is partnership and also rivalries as well. So last year, with the first ingression of Saturn, it can feel like that maybe you got yourself into a legal hurdle, or you might have had a crisis of faith. Like the message that I share, is that good enough to others? And because Mars was in the first house, this could have really talked to us about feeling confident in one way, but not all the time, basically. Now, this ninth house, this time around with Saturn being here, this would really talk to you about let's build, for example, a long-term educational platform. Let's get serious about travel or legal matters as well. Last year, Mars in the first was very much about personal glory. It's about pushing your own image. It's about trying to have more physical energy, trying to, let's say, become more sporty. However, this time around, Mars is in the seventh house, which is let's be in a strategic alliance. Let's go through a breakup. Let's um, let's make changes within the partnership. Let's celebrate the success of the partner also. So last year you paid attention to yourself a little bit more. It looks like in the next two years we are going to be paying attention to the partner a little bit more. Last year with Vesta in the fourth house, you might have been obsessed a little bit over your roots, your home security, being alone, and stuff like that. And this time around, Vesta is in the seventh house as well. So others are somehow stealing the spotlight from you. There is a huge focus on your one-to-one relationship. With Saturn in the ninth house, the ninth house is about your worldview. It's the big stage. It's teaching, publishing, and, international matters. So, last year you might have felt like having to have a check on your ego. Maybe a trip went wrong, or a piece of your writing was criticized, or maybe you didn't have as much time to study, or maybe this was about studying. But now this is about you publishing, you doing the talking, you turning your, let's say, astrological knowledge into a Saturnian structure, like you are creating courses and so forth. So this is about taking it to the next level. Um, you know, with Mars, Vesta, and Shiva in your seventh house, it really looks like that you might be killing off certain type of partnerships in your life. And maybe you are ready to replace them with something that like gives more equality, for example. Maybe you start being focused more on your audience, or you are trying to be more supportive towards your partner, or you are requiring your partner to be more supportive towards something that you have been dedicated to, such as your studies. I can imagine you signing a contract, for example, to take your teaching to a global audience. You are not going to be the local star anymore. This is about reaching others as well. I can imagine you might, that you might find a partner who is going to be helping you destroy some of your outdated ideas. So it's about doing business with someone, but in a very upgraded version, a new type of platform. With seventh and ninth house matters, maybe this is about winning a long-standing legal battle, for example, or a contractual negotiations. Or this might be talking to you about that your partner is going to be traveling a lot more, or there is going to be a work scenario change for them. Negatively speaking, this could indicate that you might have become so rigid in your belief system that can be affecting some of your partnerships as well. It's kind of like I am in the right, you are in the wrong, and then we can have arguments over that. The seventh house is open enemies, so it might be someone who tries to challenge you publicly in a way, like in front of the neighbors and stuff like that. And that could lead to certain type of aggressive confrontations. Or maybe you're trying to build an educational system, but you might be dealing with some drama, for example, within the partnership. Now, of course, Uh, imagine Saturn in the ninth house as kind of like the editor of your book. And since Saturn rules the sixth house as well as the seventh house, maybe we're gonna have to be able to watch out for something that is, certain type of ways of making mistakes. Now, Saturn rules your sixth house. So last year with Mars in the first, it really feels like that you were focusing on like you had this idea that I'm gonna get sporty, I'm gonna lose weight, I'm gonna do the calorie count. Maybe this was something to do with um, vanity matters as well. Maybe you had to change, you were forced to change your lifestyle somehow. But this year, this is also an indication in that case that this year your partner has to be changing their lifestyle as well. And especially if you got a warning sign of that last year too. Or, the sixth house is sometimes this is the boring work that we do. The work we do on a daily basis. And maybe last year you didn't have as much of a mood, for example, to carry out some of these routine tasks. This year, you might start doing that because the partner is like, kind of like questioning that. Last year was about you wanting to be the star of your own life, but your daily routine might have been messy or non-existent, or you couldn't be the star of your life because you had these daily obligations. And now you're going to say that I need a partner who is going to give me that type of freedom. Um, Yes, of course, this could talk to us about last year you might have injured yourself a little bit. Maybe a slight accident at the gym and so forth. And then this year, this would talk to us about going back to that routine as well. Believing in that, you have healed enough so that you can go back to the old routines. This could indicate some dispute, for example, at work as well, or an issue with an employee that might be turning into kind of like a legal nightmare as well. Maybe there were certain type of details that you ignored last year, and then it comes back this time around. You have to kind of like sort it out. Maybe last year you were so obsessed with the truth that you started kind of like pushing your body to its limits. And maybe that affected your medical well-being. So that's your kind of like forecast, Leo. Remember, I made a separate video about Neptune, so you might want to revisit that or listen to that because Saturn and Neptune are together in your ninth house. So Neptune will add to it. Let's move on to Cancer rising sign. So, Cancer rising sign, you have got this ingression into your 10th house, which is basically triggering your professional life, career, public status, going towards your calling. While the Mars Vesta Shiva powerhouse basically is in your 8th house, shared finances, taxes, deep psychological shift, as well as something to do with your fears. So last year, Saturn was a preview of certain type of a pressure potentially coming from leadership positions. There might have been a sudden check on your status. Maybe you have lost your job. Maybe a heavy new job or a boss who challenged you. But this year, going forward, Saturn is about establishing your long-term authority figure. It's about kind of like cementing your professional brand. Mars is the planet of drive. Now, Mars was in your second house last year. So that was like what gave you satisfaction potential is that I'm earning money. I'm making money. I'm able to spend money. Or this might have felt like that I wanted to spend money because I wanted to feel like I'm a king or a queen. But this time around, Mars is in the 8th house, which is about coming up with a financial strategy. Yes, I have got debts, I have to pay them back, I have to pay my taxes, dues, and so forth. Last year, Vesta was in your 5th house, so you might have obsessed over a creative project or even on your child's success. But Vesta this year is in the 8th house as well, and that's about you creating financial freedom. Remember, the 10th house is the highest point of your chart. You know, Saturn is not about fame here, it's about reputation. And maybe you had a couple of bad moments last year, or you had some moments where you realized that your career needed pretty much of an upgrade. Maybe you felt unappreciated or somehow burdened as well by a title, for example. And now, this time around, this Saturn wants you to build your own institution. It's not just about working, it's about you being that CEO of your own life, basically. It is asking you to take full responsibility for your public image. This is asking you to step on a stage. This is about you building the stage up for yourself. But I'm going to build that on a rock solid stone, kind of like not on wood, because if it's raining, then it's going to become wet. If it's made of stone, then it's rock solid and the wind is not going to kind of blow that away. Now, Mars, Vesta Shiva in your 8th house, it's about trying to kill off a debt or trying to kill off the inner demons, the demons that are whispering that, oh, I'm not good enough and all those type of stuff. Or you're trying to end a contractual agreement, potentially a bad contract, or certain type of psychological dependencies. Uh, it's about you having more of a tunnel vision now for your long-term security. It's about fixing uh, um, fixing your career up, basically. So I can imagine that you are ready to finalize some financial deals or inheritance that might be giving you that 10th house freedom to launch your own business, for example. I'm not sharing the stage anymore. I'm gonna be the owner of that theater. Or maybe this is a psychological breakthrough, some type of old trauma or fear that was holding back your career. And then now you are meant to be emerging more of as a fearless leader because you have faced your internal destroyer, your internal demons, basically. I almost said Damien, uh, but no demons. Um, or maybe in your career, you are going to be given a task of fixing something which is broken, for example, in your department. Maybe it's a financial mess. And if you put enough effort in it, actually, you can fix it up. And that could bring you a huge reward later on. But Saturn in the 10th house is also act like an archetype of the judge. So if your finances aren't in order, this could be a public audit, for example, to your business as well. That might be causing certain type of professional setback. Or maybe you are trying to grow, expand your career, but maybe what distracts you is certain type of a fight over money matters. I mean, imagine that the work is not paying your extra times, overtime, and so forth. And then it is not allowing me to focus on my professions that I would like to do. Or this might be giving you ruthless ambition as well. We can get obsessed over winning. We can get very obsessed over launching something as well. But also, it's kind of like when you are in a legal case, it could indicate that I win the money, but maybe it costs my reputation at the same time. This could even talk to us about having to balance out our home life as well as our private life. Maybe this is about the realization that it's not all about the money, but it's also about my own sanity, my own safety. Like, do I feel safe at this work? Maybe I am making really good money, but what do I have to sacrifice for that? Now, Saturn rules your seventh house, which is partnership, spouses, and rivalry as well. So this could, this is telling us that the professional success might be connected to an other person as well. Or maybe this is a legal commitment. Maybe this is about you managing other people as well somehow. The seventh house is the spouse, the business partners, the contractual agreement, while the 10th house is your public image, the boss archetype. So last year with Mars in the second house, I think you were focused on your personal bank account, making money coming your way, but because Saturn is the ruler of your seventh house and then moving into the 10th, you might have felt like you couldn't move upwards without someone else's permission or approval or cooperation. But now that Vesta, Mars, and Shiva triple conjunction, it kind of starts thinking like if I want to reach the top of the mountain, you know what, I have to settle certain type of power struggles within a partnership. So therefore, it could talk to you about a major contract or a relationship that might become like this catapult in your professional sphere. It's potentially, meeting up someone powerful enough who can set you on your path, basically. Or maybe your spouse, becomes a key player somehow in your career. Maybe they are going to be giving you the structure you need to be able to handle financial complexities. Maybe they are actually giving you the money that you need. Or maybe it's about you having to fight over money with a competitor, with a professional ally, or simply there is a conflict, that needs to be resolved. Um, however, I can imagine divorce as well with this for some of you. And that divorce might end up as being, like a settlement matter, how to share the assets, and so forth. I can imagine that a new boss might be coming into the picture and they are very rigid, very strict, and it can feel like that they don't like us. They are pressurizing us to, cut costs back or, to kind of watch out for the bank account, basically. Or you would like to get out of a contract badly, but it's like you are having this contractual handcuff, basically. So that's your energy pattern, Cancer rising. Um, Remember, I made a separate video about Neptune through the houses as well. You might want to listen to that and kind of like put the picture together so that you can have a full understanding of how that 10th house is playing out in your life right now. Let's move on to Gemini rising sign. So, Gemini rising sign, this is the second time Saturn is ingressing into the sign of Aries, which is your 11th house. So, last year you received a bit of a preview here. 11th house is connected to long-term goals, social networks, large organizations, your hopes and dreams. The dispositor of that Saturn this year is Mars, which has got a very tight conjunction to Vesta in your ninth house, higher education, publishing, and international travel. But last year, Mars was in your third house, which was focusing on local connections, for example. But now I am more about global impact. So what exactly mean by that? I mean, with the Saturn in the 11th house, maybe you were a bit more lonely, you didn't have the friends, you had to be auditing, your friendships. You might even have cut out some of them. You might even have gotten into certain type of arguments with them. But this Saturn ingression feels like that I'm going to be building this professional network. It's about accepting the fact that quality is better than quantity, basically. Mars was in your third house last year, which might be a bit of a drama when commuting or dramatic talks or stuff like that. With the ninth house Mars, this is about building a new worldview. It's about focusing on connecting, focusing on a masterwork, basically. Last year, Vesta was in your sixth house. That might have obsessed over health and specific work routine. Oh, and then this time around, Vesta is also in the ninth house as well. So I've got a message. I want to figure out the truth. So with Saturn in the 11th house, this is where you share the stage. But Saturn here makes you slightly bit picky about who you stand next to. So that's why you might have had a falling out with a friend of yours, even with a group, because it might have felt like that they were holding you back from your dreams, or you might have felt that your dreams were too expensive or unrealistic. And now you might start doing more strategic networking. Yeah, I'm not just going to hang out with people. I'm going to join, I don't know, professional associations, or I'm going to build a membership model, or, Saturn in Aries demands you to lead a group, not just to be the participant of it. This is about having fans, but what if I created kind of like a bit of a family as well? And with Mars Vesta Shiva in your ninth house, you are meant to be killing off an old belief system, or you have to be changing up your teaching style, because you might be doing things in an outdated way. And therefore, this might be giving you a tunnel vision for a major educational project or writing a book in a way. Or I can imagine that you are ready to kind of like build like a new community, a new platform. Um, it's with Saturn also it's a protector as well. So this is about protecting, my long-term clients, protecting my audience as well, because I want them to be around as long as possible so that they can give me a certain type of long-term stability. So I think it's time for you to burn down some of your local limitations and then sharing your message on a global platform. And maybe this is about having to collaborate with others to be able to make that happen as well. This is about potentially building a loyal audience. So you might be coming up with certain type of loyalty programs, membership programs, and so forth. Maybe you become so focused on the truth or a philosophy that you attract, very high level peers, for example, in your life. Sometimes this is about moving from kind of like doing something general to more of a specialist type of field. However, negatively speaking, this could indicate that if we have got such like a very radical worldview on something, we can kind of chase away our professional network as well. Um, and then what happens is that you have no platform left to speak from. Or maybe you are trying to launch a new project, but you hit a bit of a wall. Maybe some of the logistics or the technological side of things are not necessarily working out. Or maybe there is certain type of political matters, bureaucracy related stuff. And, we might be struggling to kind of jump that. Or you can get so obsessed with the message of yours that you kind of stop listening to other people, to your friends, to your community, and maybe that community can collapse. So you might want to be a little bit more on the careful side. Um, Now, Saturn rules also your eighth house. And the eighth house is about shared assets. It's about fears, but also it might be connected to debts and psychological complexes as well. So, somehow we've got this psychological baggage that you have been carrying for a while. Or maybe there are certain type of friends that are a psychological baggage, and you have to be actually, helping them out all the time. So with last year, Mars being in the third house, you might have felt like you were the king or the queen of your local circle. Maybe you talked a lot about your ideas, but Saturn as the ruler of your eighth house entering the 11th, it might have become a financial squeeze from a group, or you started realizing your dreams a little bit, and then maybe it required a bit of an investment that you weren't ready for. And now that Mars, Vesta, Shiva, still Saturn ruling other people's money, it says that I have to be able to do the research, and then I have to be kind of like figuring out what people want so that it can build me wealth. And that's the 11th house. So maybe it's about you launching a certain type of a community project in order for you to be able to clear your debts. I mean, imagine that you do this crowdfunding campaign, or you do a membership model. Or I can imagine that you're trying to become a leader in a field that deals with taboo subjects like astrology, psychology, and so forth. Or it can indicate even to be that you would like to build kind of like an occult center. Or you might even get inheritance or certain type of investments, a bank loan, to be able to fund your social projects, your long-term goals, to kind of walk towards a better future that you would like to build for yourself. But imagine that maybe old tax or debt issues are coming back, and then that's somehow stopping your momentum. Or imagine that being part of a friend zone becomes a financial burden. It's not as much of a support anymore. Maybe it's about the give and take. I always give, but I don't receive anything back in return, especially when I need them. Maybe you are ready to invest into a group project, but if it's not well thought out, that Saturn can punish you because of the lack of structure, and it could indicate a loss of money as well. So please remember that also. Um, okay, and last but not least, oh, I'm going days, and that wasn't my plan. We're gonna go hours. So last but not least, Taurus rising sign. Taurus, this is going to be happening in your 12th house. Have I recorded the Taurus one? No, we haven't recorded it yet. Okay, so Taurus rising sign, this is happening in your 12th house. Saturn is ingressing into your 12th house, but there is a lot of 10th house activation going on for you as well. So, the 12th house is the unseen, the mental health, the closure. And the dispositor of your Saturn this year is that Mars Vesta Shiva conjunction in your 10th house, which is career, reputation. So there is somehow the universe who is asking you to burn down your old professional image and to kind of like find a more sacred path. So therefore, many Taurus rising sign will experience job change in the next 2.5 years. I mean, last year Saturn might have given you some insomnia, fears, or feeling invisible, for example. But this time around, Saturn wants you to harden your spirit a little bit. It wants you to master solitude. It wants you to close down old karmic chapters. Last year, Mars, the ruler of Saturn, was in the fourth house. So let's say, you were the one who was, doing all the logistics around the home. You were the queen or the king of the house, basically. Maybe you were spending a lot of time at home alone as well. But this time around, that Mars is in the 10th house. So that's about how I'm going to reach this career pivot. What's going to be my next professional move? So the 12th house is the backstage. And Saturn here is very quiet but very heavy at the same time though. So I maybe last year you were a little bit more exhausted. Maybe you felt like that your efforts were being ignored, for example, by the family members. Maybe they didn't treat you as the queen or the king of the home. And that might have caused certain type of hidden stress for you. But this is now about spiritual discipline. Now this is about working on things that no one sees yet. Maybe you are ready to finish a project in secret, or you are dealing with some legacy issues as well, or Saturn is asking you whether you are strong enough to stand alone in the dark. And because we've got the Mars Vesta Shiva triple conjunction in your 10th house, basically imagine this is where the visible explosion is happening. So therefore, I'm trying to kill off a job title. I get into an argument with a boss. I'm ready to destroy the career that I have built, and I'm ready to build a new one because it no longer fits me anymore. Or I'm done being the old way of being a boss, and I'm going to be upgrading my business. I'm going to be upgrading my leadership style. because I want to build legacy. I want to be known for something. So I can imagine that you might be using the 12th house kind of solitude to rebuild your professional system. I can imagine that you take that 12 houses spiritual research and make it your career, basically. It's kind of like, okay, I'm going to be building a retreat. Or maybe you realize that that career path that you have been on is dead, and potentially you might have received some signs for that last year. So we are looking for like a way to exit gracefully, and getting ready for a massive rebirth in a few years' time. It could also indicate that the work has become very aggressive somehow, and maybe people were working against our reputation. And maybe I started isolating myself, or that caused me anxiety, depressions as well. This is an archetype of psychosomatic burnout. You try to push your career, but maybe you have been ignoring your mental health. Because there is that invisible pressure, and that is breaking your physical body because potentially you didn't rest as much. Or you might have sacrificed everything for a job that doesn't actually value you. So you burn for a cause that isn't even yours. So this is also the realization that walking out of the door might be actually my bestest possible uh, opportunity. The Saturn is the ruler of the ninth house and the 10th house. So imagine Taurus, you are a builder, and Saturn is also a builder. So Saturn in the 12th house surely wants you to have a better inner resilience. Imagine Saturn as the master of the mountain. Obviously, Saturn rules the mountain in your chart, the 10th house, how far I can get. But maybe we have to be able to change our belief system. We have to be working through some of our inner demons, for example. So I think you can use that Mars Shiva energy to clear away the distraction from your career. And you can use Saturn to do a deep cleansing in kind of like in a little bit of a quiet way. It's basically learning to become a little bit more egotistical and focusing a little bit more um, on your psychological um, and the emotional welfare, basically. Of course, Saturn in the 12th house is often something that we are very afraid of, right? Because, yes, this can give us some suicidal thoughts and depression and super heavy dreams and kind of like getting, this is kind of like being underwater. And when you think of even, kind of like the iceberg, only the tip of the iceberg can be seen, right? So there's a lot of stuff underneath. So this might be talking to us about a bit of a soul searching. This is the last house of the zodiacal circle. So this is about preparing for a closure. This is one of the most cryptic house, actually. This is a spiritual audit. While the 10th house is about uploads and external wins, the 12th house demands you to look at the ghosts in the machine and how much it costs, basically. So you might start feeling this need of being more in solitude, Maybe socializing feels expensive. The job that we do feels draining. Doesn't mean that we are becoming antisocial. It's just about wanting to spend a little bit more quality time with yourself as well. Maybe you're going to start realizing that habits or projects or people from the last 28 or so year is going to start falling away. Or connections that you have built last year are going to kind of walk out on you as well. And if you let them go, you might even start feeling this immense sense of relief. Let's call the 12th house as the unremembered memories, the unresolved guilt that might be coming to the surface. You can start thinking about old days as well. Oh, why did I not accept that job offer back in the days? And so forth. But what if I started something completely new? I think you might start seeing more your self-sabotaging patterns, things that have been plagued your life for years. And this is where Shiva is coming into the picture. Shiva wants to destroy those. It tells you altogether that you have to become your own therapist. Yes, 12 house rules, hospitals, retreats, prisons as well. So this could talk to you about that the work actually can make you, it can drop your vitality. So you're gonna have to go, unfortunately, for a bit of a checkup as well. This is the escapism fatigue type of archetype. Last year might have been a little bit more worried about your family, and maybe there were some family feuds, arguments going down, or how is it going to be alone and paying the rent alone? But maybe this year you're going to start feeling more motivated to get your reputation um, kind of like sorted, basically, to build something else. This transit feels like for you, it's like a sabbatical, basically. Um, I don't know, in certain countries it's 10 weeks or, 20 weeks in certain instances as well. And maybe you want to use that type of time to figure out what your next career move is. So, Taurus rising sign, good luck. And good luck to all of you. I hope this video helps to have a better understanding of how the Saturn ingression into the sign of Aries going to trigger you, or how it has started triggering you since last year. But maybe you post something there and then now it's about crystallization, cementation, or pretty much the final audits are starting to remove those blockages that Saturn represents. So good luck, everyone, and I will see you in my next video. Take care. Bye bye.